What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Talking Halos. I'm your host today, Jared Timms, and I'm joined alongside my co-host, my partner in crime, Nate Green. Nate, how you doing?
Doing well. How about you, buddy?
I'm not doing too bad. Happy opening day to you, even though you got the L, but happy opening day. I
Same.
know it's the L, and L's an L, but opening day is better than nothing. Opening day is far removed for me, so we'll get there. I'll be watching college baseball for the time being, but man, I'm excited. We're getting even closer to baseball season, even closer to pitchers
Yep.
and catchers reporting. Um, it's great seeing pictures and videos of them starting to report to camp. I already saw Logan O'Hoppe getting to spring training or in January, which is crazy. I'm really excited. Like always for baseball to get back up and rolling here. So with all that being said, thank you so much for watching and listening here at Talking Halos. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and hit the bell as well. Don't forget to follow us on all our social medias, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can follow myself on X at Jared_Timms, Nate at NateGreen34. And let's get it rolling here, Nate. So we promised we'd talk about this. We have some, I don't want to call it hot takes, but takes that a lot of people don't like. The fun thing, and I'm going to state this up front, the fun thing with the Baseball Hall of Fame is that everybody can have their own opinion and nobody to an extent is right and nobody to an extent is wrong. Um, Now you can think you're wrong, you can think somebody's wrong, you can think that you're 100% right. But what my ballot would be is going to be different than yours, is going to be different than a lot of our watchers and listeners here. And if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and let us know who you would have voted for in this year's Hall of Fame ballot. We're going to go over it. First off, congratulations to Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, and I'm gonna forget the last one, Todd Helton.
Todd
Todd Helton.
Hilton.
And the only reason
Yep.
why I forgot the last one, Todd Helton, because I probably wouldn't have voted for him, and a lot of people are gonna really dislike that statement. But how do you feel about these three guys getting in? Well, I think it's well deserved across the board.
Yep.
That I wouldn't have voted for Todd Helton, not because of the Colorado factor, just because I think that he was Hall of really good. But hey, he got in. That's awesome. He well deserved, fantastic player in his career. It's cool to start seeing guys that we grew up watching getting into the Hall as well. But initial thoughts on these three guys getting in, along with Jim Leland too.
Yeah. Yeah, congratulations. Beltre was a no doubter for me. That was a pretty easy one. Helton, I've gone back and forth with. I think based on some of the guys who have gotten in, I think he deserved to get in. He was a really, really good player. Um Mauer getting in on the first ballot. He was a no-brainer for me. Did I know he was going to get in on the first ballot? No. Um, and I think you and I agree on that, where like first ballot is a little bit different than, second, third. People are gonna be like, why? What's the big difference? But like first ballot means like you were the best player in the game type of thing. Like it wasn't like, well, you're a good player, but you weren't like the best player in the game. So like Mike Trout, Ken Griffey Jr., Derek Jeter, those type of guys, first ballot Hall of Famers for me. Um, Adrian Beltre, even like he was a first ballot Hall of Famer for me. But
Absolutely.
Joe Mauer, not really. I probably would have voted for him based on the who was on the ballot this year, but would I have expected him to get in on the first? No.
So somebody told me a while back, and one of the voters actually told me a while back, like, don't be afraid. And obviously, like I'm never going to get a vote. You're never going to get a vote. But don't I wouldn't be afraid of not voting for 10 people, right? It felt like
Yeah,
for a
of
while.
course.
It felt like for a while at least that like everybody had to have 10 people on the ballot. And the ballot was good enough to have 10 people. When you had Bonds on there and Clemens and Manny and all those guys, granted, like Manny's still on the list and ARod, but and we'll probably get into that here shortly, the whole steroid thing. But yeah, the number one thing was always don't be afraid to not vote for 10 people. Like you don't need to fill up your ballot. And I've kind of taken that to heart. So for me, I agree with you on Joe Mauer. Hall of Famer. I don't think that he deserved to be in that elite class of guys like Mariano Rivera, Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, I don't want to talk about David Ortiz, but even David Ortiz, I didn't think should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer just based on stats alone. Um, but even David Ortiz, if you're comparing David Ortiz to Joe Mauer, is tough. Like you reserve that first ballot, Ichiro goes on the ballot next year. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Adrian Beltre, the best of the best, the elite of the elite. And Joe Mauer was a great player. He really was, especially for the position. But the one thing that I always think about, and I think you might have brought it up for me, if Joe Mauer plays a position, is he a Hall of Famer?
Like if he's playing first base only, or if he's
Yeah,
playing second base or shortstop, like if he doesn't play catcher, is he a Hall of Famer?
that was
Maybe not.
I didn't say that question right. If he plays a position, he was a catcher. If he plays another
Yeah.
position, not catcher, is he a Hall of Famer?
Yeah.
He's probably not,
That's
right?
that's one of my things with Mowers. Like he played the right position. You look at guys like Todd Helton. Todd Helton had a lot of guys to like compete with to be as good as he was. And dude's an all-star like a good amount of time. So like
Yeah.
for me, that's why I like Todd Helton, and I had him in there, not just the Coors effect. You take him out of Coors, he was still a very good player. WRC plus, very, very good WRC plus taken out, which accounts for Coors. So yeah, it is interesting when you start to think about positional value and the Hall of Fame, because I think that is a big deal, because you're comparing, you know, Joe Mauer against the top 10 catchers in baseball history. And it's like, yeah, there aren't as many good catchers as there are good shortstops or good first basemen or whatever position you want to look at. So that is an interesting point.
Yeah, Hall of Famer for sure, but I don't think I would not have voted for him on this first ballot. Didn't think he was a first ballot Hall of Famer, but regardless, he's in. It helps down the road that you don't have to vote for him again as
Yeah.
well. I don't think there's going to be too many more guys that you're going to want to vote for in the upcoming years, but regardless, we'll kind of see where it goes from there. So first and foremost, let's go over, our ballots, what we would have probably voted for, if we would get a vote. Mine would be Carlos Beltran, his second year on the ballot. I'm gonna let him in now. I know people are gonna dislike that, but we talked about the first ballot thing. Carlos Beltran, arguably the best switch hitter of all time. Postseason accolades. He's a fantastic player. Carlos Beltran deserves to be in. Adrian Beltre, absolutely first ballot Hall of Famer. The most underrated player on this list, Andrew Jones, best center fielder, best defensive center fielder probably of all time. Should be a Hall of Famer, especially. Should be a Hall of Famer. Should be a Hall of Famer. Don't even give me questions about that. Andy Pettit, I think, should be a Hall of Famer as well. And I would have voted for him. Manny Ramirez. We'll talk about steroids here in a second, but Manny Ramirez should be in, not only for what he did in regular season, but also the postseason. A lot of people forget about what, Hall of Fame does also include postseason. So Alex Rodriguez, I think he should be in. Do I think he should be all first ballot Hall of Famer? No, because the steroids, but you know, he's good enough. You're missing one of the best hitters, one of the best players of all time in the Hall of Fame. I would have voted for Chase Utley as a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think that he was good enough, especially when you look at positionally. He's one of the best second basemen, probably of all time. Definitely of our era, definitely of our generation. And then last but not least, Billy Wagner, who missed by 5 votes. I want to see him get in. I'm assuming he's going to get in. But the reliever conversation is definitely a fun one. So I don't know if you have your list of guys you would voted for.
Yeah. Beltre, of course. Todd Helton, Joe Mauer. I would have gone those 3 guys. Um, like I said, the Joe Mauer thing, I would have voted for him, but I wouldn't have expected him to get in just because I didn't know who else would have the opinion of that. ARod for me, I think he gets in. He won't get in, but he deserves to get in. Um, Andy Pettit, and then Manny would have been my last guy. And I've gone back and forth on Manny. But if we take away some things from what he did, like he was still one of the best postseason hitters of all time. And so my list is small. And like you talked about, you don't need 10. And I wouldn't have voted for 10 because I didn't think there were that many this year. The Billy Wagner thing, can I tell the story of Major League Baseball without Billy Wagner? Yes. Do I think he's a Hall of Famer? I don't know. He was really, really good. One of the best left-handed relievers of his era.
One of the best
Um,
relievers.
all I have to say is how many times did he win reliever of the year? How many times was he an all-star? Like if we're going to compare him to the greats, we're going to compare him to the greats, and you're going to say, oh, well, it was Mo and Trevor Hoffman. Well, he wasn't even the best closer of his generation. So, that's kind of for me where I'm like, he was good. Was he that dominant? Like, yes, his numbers say he was that dominant, but I, I I don't think that he was good enough to be there, because if you're voting for Billy Wagner, and this is going to excite some Angel fans, maybe pissing people off, but if you're going to vote for Billy Wagner, you got to vote for K-Rod. And I know you're going to shake your head. K-Rod has the most saves in a single season of all time. K-Rod is fifth in saves in his career. Um, Very good closer. Was a closer his whole career. Like the World Series champion. He has as many All Star appearances as Billy Wagner. He has more Rollade's Relief Pitcher of the Year awards than Billy Wagner. Like, if we're gonna have to start, and you're not a K Rod guy in the hall, so if we're voting K Rod, we got to vote, or if we're voting Billy Wagner, we got to vote K Rod. I just chose to vote neither.
That's fair. I didn't have Billy Wagner on my ballot for a while because it's so hard to grade relievers. But the more you look at his stats, you I think he was a Hall of Famer. You don't. Yeah, people are going to be upset. I don't think K-Rod's a Hall of Famer. Now the question, my next question would be, who's the guy whose record did Frankie beat?
My guess would have been Gagne, but
No, it's not Gagne. It's somebody from the 90s or late 80s. If you looked it up, I
it
don't know. And that goes to my point, like that guy's not in the Hall of Fame. You don't know who the guy is that he broke the record of, right? I keep wanting to say Rob Deere, but it's not Rob Deere. That's Canyon High School. 200 home runs in the majors guy. But when you say the name, I'm gonna be like, yep, that was it. But yeah, for me, like the guy before K-Rod, who he broke all the, he broke the saves record. And just like that, he's not in the Hall of Fame. Why does that matter? So it's cool. It's a cool record and everything. I'm not a saves guy when it comes down to it.
I know
It's gonna
you're
be
not a big
it's
closer guy,
it's
which
gonna well, it's gonna be weird moving
fine.
forward, like how the Writers Association votes for the Hall of Fame too, or votes for relievers in the Hall of Fame. But I don't want to just
Was
talk
it
about,
Bobby Thigpen?
yeah, Bobby Thigpen, White Sox. Yep. Yeah, I knew right away when you said it. I don't know why I kept thinking Rob Deere in my head there, but
Technically, Edwin Diaz is number two as well.
he
Um,
tied Thigpen, I think, one year, didn't he?
I think he did it after K Rod. So K Rod had broken the record.
And then
Diaz,
he beat
yeah.
Thigpen. Gotcha. Yeah. Like I said, I got nothing wrong with K-Rod. He was one of the most dominant closers when he was with the Angels. It just felt like he fell off after he was with the Angels. So just my opinion, I'm not going to vote for him. Let's talk steroids in the Hall of Fame because that's always a fun subject. Everybody, it's an opinion-based thing. I don't care if you don't want Hall of Famers in there. I feel like you're missing a lot of good players that are in the Hall of Fame. And you look at guys like, if ARod doesn't take steroids, ARod doesn't get caught, he's probably still a Hall of Famer. Same thing goes with Manny Ramirez. He's probably still a Hall of Famer. Bonds, Clemens, still Hall of Famers, whether they took steroids or not. Now, for me, you look at a guy like Mark McGwire. Mark McGwire doesn't take steroids. He's a really good player. He's probably not a Hall of Famer.
He might not even be a really good player.
He was a pretty good player. He was a pretty good player, like
But how
for
many
years.
of his hits were homers?
Oh yeah, yeah, no, no,
Like,
definitely, I get
you
that.
take away half of those half of those homers, and he's not a good player.
I get
He's
it.
an average player.
I get it. Same thing, Rafael Palmeiro. I feel like Rafael Palmeiro should be a Hall of Famer. I mean, 3,000 hits, 500 plus home runs. Even if he's not a steroid guy, even if he doesn't take steroids, he's still. Plus, you got guys in the Hall that you question anyways. You got Mike Piazza, Jeff Bagwell. You probably question Frank
My,
Thomas a little bit. Like there are guys there, right?
that's my biggest pet peeve, and my most frustrating thing about the Hall of Fame is, like, they pick and choose on who is an okay steroid user and who
Yeah.
is not. Like, Pudge is in the Hall of Fame. There was some question
Mhm.
whether Pudge is clean. Um, Piazza, same thing. There's some questions if Piazza was clean. We can go to David Ortiz and just say that dude was a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he is not clean. We have already
He came out and said he took steroids. Like,
so like, those are the things that really piss me off. It's like, oh, well, we don't like Barry Bonds because he claims he never took steroids, but like, it's so obvious that he did, that we are going to penalize him for being the best player in the game by far, because we don't like him. Roger Clemens was kind of a hothead when he played, wasn't nice to reporters. Um, so we aren't going to vote for him, even though he was the best pitcher in baseball for his entire career. Like you can look at his year 21, he was one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. So that's the thing that really frustrates me is like the way that they go about it is like, oh well, we'll count the we'll let Ortiz in because he's a nice guy, but Bonds and Clemens and ARod, like we don't like them, so they're not getting in.
The character thing gets me every single time. It kills me, the character thing.
Kurt Schilling is a Hall of Famer. No matter
Brian,
what he did off the field, what he did on the field, he was one of the best pitchers, one of the best postseason pitchers of all time. And that again, like that's the frustrating thing. You could go back generations and look at, you
Ty
know,
Cobb.
Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth and guys like that, and it's like, were they good people? Probably. Like I've heard, and of course we don't know this for sure, but like we've heard Ty Cobb was not a good guy. We've heard that Babe Ruth was not that good of a person, but they were so good at baseball. Like that is what we're putting into the Hall of Fame. Like you were a Hall of Famer because of what you've done, and it's what you do on the field, not what you do off the field.
Yeah, I don't want this to get taken the wrong way because like I said, it's a touchy subject for sure. But also, Brian Kinney was talking about it on the actual Hall of Fame show, or it might have been Bob Costas actually. Either Brian Kinney or Bob Costas we're talking about on the Hall of Fame show, and they mentioned like Omar Vizquel. They were like, he was trending up. He was trending up. He was at like 50 plus percent. And now all of a sudden he's down at 17% because of stuff that came out about him. And it's like at some point, and a lot of people probably won't agree with this, at some point you have to separate what happened on the field and, what has happened post. And that goes for Curt Schilling. I think Curt Schilling's a Hall of Famer for sure because of what he did on the field. Is he a good person? No, probably not. Like he's a shitty person at the end of the day. Like you see what he does on social media. Same thing. I mean, talk about same thing as Ty Cobb. Like I mentioned it. Like at some point you have to separate that, and you have to you gotta figure out a way to get those guys that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame in the Hall of Fame. I mean, you can't talk about baseball, and you brought it up earlier. You can't talk about baseball without Barry Bonds. It's like
Yeah.
there's a 10-year gap there where Barry Bonds was legitimately god of baseball. Like people didn't pitch to him. Like he had a 600 on base percentage one season. Like you have to figure out a way. Roger Clemens, one of the best pitchers of all times. Like 10-year gap there where he was the best pitcher of generation. He was Nolan Ryan at that time. Like he's unbelievable. Same thing with Curt Schilling. You can't talk about baseball history without the bloody sock and what he did in the postseason for the Red Sox. Not saying that one moment gets you in the Hall of Fame, but he was a good enough pitcher to be in the Hall of Fame. So yeah, same thing goes with Manny Ramirez. Like you got to find a way. Alex Rodriguez, does his after career off field antics not get him in the Hall of Fame. It's probably more the steroids, but
No, it's definitely this. It's the steroids. Like he served a
be in the
hundred.
Hall. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
He served the suspension for steroids, so they're going to be like, yeah, we know you took steroids, so you're off.
So this
I want.
go
Can
ahead.
we talk for the last couple minutes about Carlos Beltran?
That's
Because I know,
I was just about to get into that
yeah,
too because it's the
because
same.
we have different opinions on this.
Yeah, it's the same for me. Beltran is the same thing as everybody else that we just talked about, right? Like Bonds, Clemens, steroids, and for what the Astros did. Now, thank goodness that nobody else on this Astros team will probably be in consideration for Hall of Fame because
Altuve's a possibility.
Altuve is the only guy that was the first name that came into my mind is Altuve, but probably nobody else is going to get really any consideration. Maybe Garrett Cole, but I don't think he was really on any of
Well,
those
and that doesn't really affect him.
Justin Verlander. I know, but you get what I'm saying. Like
But it
you on
doesn't
that
really affect the
team.
pitchers. It really affects the hitters because,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
those are the ones who are
you
getting.
get what I'm saying. Like for me, Beltran is the same thing as a steroid user, right? For what he did in his career, he is a Hall of Famer. He had, that issue, that incident, that 1 year, 2 years, whatever it was. That's fine. And you know what it really boils down to is Rob Manfred at the end of the day, like it goes back to Rob Manfred's fault. Like if you punish the players, we're not even having this conversation because realistically, for what they did, like they probably should have got banned from baseball, right? Like at the end of the day, like if for all on in all honesty, those players probably should have got banned from baseball. You know,
At least
certain
some sort of suspension.
exactly like this. So at the end of the day, it's on Rob Manfred. So since he's on the ballot, he's a good enough player to be on it. I give him a slap on the wrist. He's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, even though statistically he's probably a first ballot Hall of Famer. At the, probably I'd say, but I get it. I totally get it if people don't vote for Carlos Beltran as well. For me, opinion based, I think he's a Hall of Famer.
So for me, I can't vote for him, right? Like because he is the ringleader of the sign stealing scandal. He is the one. It's him. You could throw Alex Cora in there. There are, and then the video guy. So those are the three guys, in my opinion, that like really ran this thing. Without Carlos Beltran, like the Astros don't cheat the way they did. Here's the thing that like really frustrates me, and this is why I can't vote for him. Steroids were not illegal in the game of baseball when Bonds and Clemens were using, right? It was illegal when ARod did it, but it was not, and it was really illegal his back half of his career, not like when he was starting. So they weren't technically breaking any baseball rules. They might have been breaking like the US rules, but like baseball rules were not being broken. Carlos Beltran knowingly broke the rules of baseball. Rob Manfred sent a letter to the every organization to say, do not cheat using video. It was out there, every team knew it, and they continued to do it. Right? Like that is cheating the game. And I understand Hall of Fame is about what your stats say, but they're also about what you did on the field, right? And that counts for me as what he did on the field because he took advantage of situations, and I think he cheated the game. I don't really think that Bonds cheated the game with taking steroids because, heck, we've already said how many guys were on steroids at that time, right? Like, I'm sure the guy he was facing was on steroids because we know Gagne was a potential user. We know Clemens was a user. We know Pettit was a user. Like, all these guys that he's facing, it's pretty even playing ground. Yeah, there are some guys that weren't using steroids there and they feel like they got cheated, but there wasn't like a piece of paper going around to each locker room saying, hey, lay off the roids. If we catch you using roids, like you're going to be gone from baseball. That was not being talked about. But there was papers going around Major League Baseball saying, do not cheat using electronics. We know you're doing it. Just stop it and we'll be good with it. And Carlos Beltran said, no, we don't care. We're going to continue to do this because it's helping us win. And you know, that's what's really frustrating to me and sad. Someone who grew up loving the game, he has been playing the game his entire life, is okay cheating the game. And as a coach, like that's something we talk about every day. Don't cheat the game, right? Like don't take shortcuts, don't do things that aren't the way you want to do things. Like do things the right way. And that's why I can't vote him in.
I get it. Like I said, this is all opinion based. Fine with it. He's a Hall of Famer in my book. So, with all that being said, got one more thing. Steroids save baseball. So I'll take a pass. Take a pass on that. That one there. I know people won't like it, but with all that being said, thank you so much for watching and listening here at Talking Halos. Go ahead and follow us wherever you are watching and listening. YouTube, subscribe, hit that bell so you know when we drop these podcasts. Getting closer and closer to baseball season. I'm extremely excited. Go ahead and follow us on all our social medias, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can follow myself at on X at Jared_Timms, Nate at NateGreen34. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day.